Naka, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to, of course, acknowledge Tawake, the Talatala and all the other people who are here. Firstly, our apologies for the delay. We got a bit late to Lower Village, got held up there, and then we've arrived here, so my apologies for that. You have a very persuasive Turangani Koro. I met him some weeks ago in Lambasa, and he convinced me that we should come here to do a budget consultation. I had also met him together with some other people from Loa. This is the first time that we've actually come to remote places in Vanuatu. As you know, that budget consultations, we normally have it around all the town centers, both in Viti Levu and Vanuatu. In Vanuatu, we had previously in Lambasa and Sabu, but never to such a place. But we've had a remote place in Viti Levu, so this is the first time doing it in Vanuatu. So I'd like to thank you for hosting us. And this, of course, also for the staff who are here with us from Ministry of Economy. Most of them have never been to this part of Vanuatu. Also, for them it's a new experience. I would like to take you through the small presentation we have to explain to you about the budget. What are the things that we have to consider? As you know that we've been through COVID, and what has been the impact of COVID. At the end of it, then we'll open up the floor. If you have any questions, you want to ask any issues you wish to raise, please do so. Sometimes in these occasions, people have some of the personal problems, but we have staff at the back. If you don't want to raise it in a public forum, you can go and see them. There's some personal matters. But we'd love to hear from you as to what are your issues, what do you like to see in the budget. The budget is to be delivered on the 15th of July. It's in the evening. I understand Walesi was here. You're now connected to Walesi in the community hall. Do you have it here? Sure. Okay, so you'll be able to watch that together with the game, the rugby games too. On the 15th of July, you'll be able to see it live. It's free, of course. You don't pay for Walesi. That's another expenditure that government had put in place, because for us it's very important that every Fijian, no matter where they live, are able to access that type of information. And as you know, through wireless you can access about 8 channels. Once the budget is presented in the evening time on the 15th, then by law we have to 1 week break in Parliament. Then the following week, then the budget gets debated. So the opposition makes comments and individual members make comment, and then we go line by line to approve the budget. So that's the process. Our financial year starts on the 1st of August to 31st of July the following year. That's our financial year. That's the 12 months. So if I could very quickly take you through the consultation. If I could stand up, if you don't mind, it makes it easier for me. Okay, Naka? Thank you. I hope the people outside can also see. We have to be mindful. The ladies are, also very important. They have to know exactly what is happening. In particular, as you know, that at the moment, a lot of price of things are also increasing. You would have experienced that. The price of fuel, the price of flour, and various other things. And we want to also explain to you as to why these costs are going up. So, come on. So you can see over here, this is the Fijian economy. What do you call the GDP, the overall gross domestic product of the country? It's been increasing for 9 straight years. As a result of COVID, the economy shrunk, it became smaller. Because the country had to shut down. When the country shut down, the tourists stopped coming. You know, tourists bring money. The country shut down, we had lockdowns, we had bubbles. 110,000 Fijians lost their jobs. No more job. So they lost their income. Every country in the world shut down. USA, Australia, New Zealand. New Zealand only opened up recently. UK, everywhere shut down. Every single country in the world, the economy became smaller. That's what you call contraction. You can see over here, these are many of these countries here. Sorry about the print. These are all tourism-based countries. All of them basically shrunk. That's Fiji over here. We lost $4.6 billion. Our economy became smaller by $4.6 billion. That's the contraction over here. Over here. That's it there. We also lost $4 billion in foreign exchange. What is foreign exchange? Foreign exchange is foreign dollars. When an Australian comes to Fiji, when they pay for airline ticket in Sydney to come on Fiji Airways, we get Australian dollars, American dollars, New Zealand dollars, Japanese yen. Everybody over here, all of you are wearing clothes. Most of the clothes that you're wearing is sewn in Fiji, but the fabric comes from overseas. The specs you are wearing comes from overseas. The ladies are wearing lipstick is made overseas. The watches you're wearing comes from overseas. This mic, this phone, all comes from overseas. This telephone comes from overseas. All the cars parked outside comes from overseas. To buy these things, you have to have foreign currency. The Japanese aren't going to accept Fijian dollars, they accept Japanese yen. There are 3 fuel companies in Fiji. They buy all the fuel from Singapore. They buy in US dollars. So you need foreign currency. If you don't have foreign currency, you can't trade. So we lost $4 billion in foreign currency through tourism earnings. Government's revenue went down by half, overnight, gone. You know, if you go, I don't know how many have been to Nandi Airport. If you go to Nandi Airport, outside the airport, there's near the bus shelter, there's a lot of trees there. Near those trees, a lot of people, mainly women, they sell boiled evi, lovo pack, roti parcel, mitai. Who do they sell it to? They sell it to the people who work at the airport. The customers aren't the tourists. The customers are the workers, Fijian workers. They sell outside Fiji Airways, ATS. So when the airport is shut down, Fiji Airways is not flying, when ATS is not catering, they also don't make any money. That's why Vitilevu got hit very hard. So what did government do? Government actually helped to help those people, and I'll show you how we did. We spent over $500 million, of which $432 million is what we call unemployment benefit. So you can see the Fijian economy is growing 9 years straight. When the economy grows every year, government has more money to be able to do things. So you're getting roads built, a lot more people are getting connected to electricity, water, all those developments take place. More people get employed, more people get jobs. You can see what happened. As a result of the COVID, it went down, minus 17.2%. We lost $4.6 billion here, 4.1%. However, we expect it to grow now, this year, by 12.4%. Why are we going to grow? Because the borders have opened up and the tourists have started coming in. They're bringing in the dollars. All the people are going back to the hotels and getting full-time work. The reason why we were able to do this is that over 93 to 94% of Fijians are now vaccinated. Remember last year, around about March, about 3,000–4,000 cases of people with COVID. But government had a vision that we wanted everybody to get vaccinated. The moment the word vaccine was mentioned, we quickly made sure we went and spoke to everybody internationally. Our Prime Minister, Mr. Foreign Affairs, he spoke to the different countries, Australia, New Zealand, India, various other places. We went and spoke to the World Bank, IMF, ADB, because we knew when the COVID came, nobody knew what was going to happen, right? People thought everybody would die off, whether the children will die, the older people will die. Then as every day, every week, we knew more about COVID, how it spreads. All the countries in the world had a problem. But as soon as they developed the vaccine, we knew that there would be so much pressure. Just think about this. USA has nearly 300 million people living there. So if you need to be vaccinated, you need 2 doses. So you need 600 million doses. Whereas Fiji, we barely make it to 900,000. So if you need 2 doses, 1.8 million doses. So if he's the pharmaceutical company, if America goes to him and says, I want 600 million doses, and we go to him, we say we want 1.8 million doses, who will he make the vaccine for first? Of course the 600 million. So we knew that. That's why till today a lot of the developed countries don't have the vaccines or got the vaccines very late. So we had the Indians, they gave us 100,000 doses first, free. Then the Australians, then the Kiwis, then the Americans, and now the French are also giving us. Everybody who's been vaccinated here, you have not paid a single cent for the vaccine. We as a government did not pay a single cent also. Of course, we'll pay for the nurse, for a person to go on the boat to go and give the vaccine, but nobody paid a single cent of vaccine. So we had a focus, we said no jab, no job. You want the 360, you have to be vaccinated. As a result of that, Fiji became one of the most highly vaccinated countries in the developing world, and in such a short period of time. So March we were at a very bad point. By December, over 90% of the population is vaccinated. We are able to open the borders. Because remember, it's not only about being vaccinated for yourself and for your family, but it's how other people will view us. So if we had very low rates of vaccination, the Australians would say, let's not go to Fiji because those people are not vaccinated. When they see a high rate of vaccination, they say, okay, Fiji is safe. That's why they're coming to Fiji. And you see the numbers and I'll show you. So, as I mentioned that the timely access to vaccine, effective rollout, we projected to grow by 12.4%. Now, cumulative to May, Vista rose about around 45% pre-pandemic levels. In other words, if you look at 2019, when we did not have COVID, so far the numbers we've got is 45% of what we had in 2019. In the month of May, we had 65% of pre-pandemic levels. The numbers we had in 2019, we got 65% of them back. Where are they coming from? They're coming from Australia, a lot of them. Australians, very high, 90% pre-COVID. Then we have Kiwis, the New Zealanders, and then the Americans. Fiji Airways at the moment is running full. This is why for us, very important to protect our national airways, our national carrier, Fiji Airways. Because it gives a lot of Fijian jobs. It also means that when something bad happens, we are the last plane to fly, because it's our country, right? When the cyclone, we'll be the last plane to fly in. As soon as the cyclone is finished, we're the first plane to fly out. Because this is our home base, and we're an island country. We're not like Australians can't drive to Fiji. They have to come by plane. So if you have investment in tourism, you have to be strategic about it. In the same way, like if you have a village and you only can access by sea, you need to have boats. You need to have control over the boats. So our June and July bookings look even better now. Now, everybody knows price of things are going up. So we have to know why. As a government too, we have to try and grapple with this issue. Now, the two things happen. I'll come to the Russia-Ukraine war second. Two things have happened because of pandemic. Firstly, is that we have what we call supply chain issues. As I mentioned, see this phone here, the fellow is doing the recording. This phone has a chip in it. Computer has a chip in it. That makes the phone work, makes the computer work. The chip is made out of a metal. That metal comes from the ground. You know, it's like gold or minerals. It comes from the ground. So when the borders were shut down, many of these countries, they no longer were mining this metal. So there is less supply of this metal, but people still want the phones. So it's supply and demand issue. So, you know, before Winston, Yongona in Suva cost $85 a kilo. After Winston, $185 a kilo. A lot of people still drinking the Yongona at the same rate, but very few Yongona plants available. Long bean in the market before a cyclone is $2 a bundle. After the cyclone, $5 a bundle. Until more people grow long bean. Supply and demand issue. That is one problem. Second one is the containers, the freight. The cost of containers have gone up. China is the largest manufacturer in the world. Everybody knows that. Most of the things that we have in Fiji is made in China. All over the world. So China, until recently, was still shut down, many parts of it. Restricted movement. So a lot of the containers were caught in China. One container from New Zealand to Fiji before the COVID cost $5,500. Now it costs $16,500. That's how much it's increased. In fact, the shipping companies told us that we are lucky. In other parts of the world, it's gone up by 800-900%. So obviously, if this gentleman here is importing fish from New Zealand, and he lives in this village, he buys it at $5 a tin and sells it to you for $7 a tin. If tomorrow the price of the tin fish and the freight will go up and he gets it for $7, he's not going to sell it to you for $7. He has to put up the price. He'll pass the price to you. Otherwise he'll go out of business. So there were two things that pushed up the price of things around the world. The second thing is, of course, the Russia-Ukraine war. Many people in the world did not know that Ukraine feeds 400 million people in this world. The amount of wheat they grow. All of you eat purini, bambakau, panikeke, bread, roti, all made out of flour. Flour is made from wheat. Wheat is not grown in Fiji. Only 2 companies in Fiji make flour. Punja & Sons in Navutu in Latoka, FMF in Walubay in Suva. They buy the wheat from Australia normally. They buy the wheat from Australia, they bring it to Fiji, they grind it, they put some vitamins and you get flour. But it's price control. So if they buy it, say from Australia, $300 a ton, they bring it here, but before they make the flour, before they sell it to the supermarket and the shops, they have to go to the Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission, which is price control. So they say, look, we bought it at $300 a ton, this is my labor cost, my electricity cost, and FCCC will look at it and say, okay, you can't sell it for any more than this price, you can make only this much margin. Then they don't sell it to you directly, you can't buy it from the factory, they sell it to the shops. When they sell it to the shop, say your Shop and Save over here in Lambasa or wherever else, before they sell it, they have to go to the FCCC again. They say, look, we bought it from this much from Punja & Sons. I'm renting a shop, this is my rent cost in Lambasa, my labor cost, all of this. Then they say, okay, you can make only this much margin. In your case, obviously, it goes up slightly because you've got to pay for the freight from Vitilevu to Vanuatu. Right? That's price control. But if tomorrow, Australia sells it to them not for $300 but $400, the price will go up. And there's a shortage of wheat in the world. Many things have gone up. The World Food Organization, if you can see over here, the price of meat, dairy, sugar, cereals, vegetable oil have all gone up. I'd like to show you a video now, which is from the World Economic Forum, which will tell you what is happening in Ukraine and as a result of the war in Ukraine, what has happened on global prices. Before I do that, you see these 2 lines here. The red line here is what you call imported inflation. Things that you buy from overseas that have gone up in price. Green is what you call domestic inflation. Local stuff. Dalo, cassava, bhaji, bindi, bora, mbele, all of these things. Right? But sometimes your price of what you grow will also go up because you may be using fertilizer from overseas. So if you put the fertilizer to grow your dalo, you will put up the price of the dalo because the cost of the fertilizer has gone up. So the guy who's running a boat service from here to there, he will put up the price because the price of fuel has gone up. So that also affects inflation, domestic inflation.
rain grows enough food to feed 400 million people on planet Earth. So when the farmers on the battlefields aren't planting or aren't harvesting, what impact do you think that's going to have? Catastrophe knocking and looming on the door for the fall. That will be not a price issue, but a supply issue, availability of food for people around the world, and that will be a catastrophe on top of a catastrophe.
We are lucky in Fiji, we have dalo and cassava and uto. That's what you call your carbohydrates. Many of the countries in Africa, in the Middle East, North Africa, some countries in Asia, the only carbohydrate they have is flour, wheat. And all of that is imported from overseas. Now in the mornings they go and fight each other for the bread. It's a fact, it's reality. People have to feed their kids, they can't get the bread. I was told yesterday by somebody that in USA a loaf of bread now costs $8 US. It's 16 Fijian dollars. Shortage of flour. So for us, we have to be able to, if it keeps on going up, we have to be able to change our lifestyle. If you eat bread every morning, please stop eating bread. If you want to pay lots of money, that's your choice. But you can then instead eat other alternatives, which we have. Now I'd like to show another video, and this is from Sri Lanka, where the government did not manage the finances well. Now I'll talk to you about foreign exchange, I'll talk to you about it later on. They did not have enough foreign exchange. As a result of that, they aren't even able to buy even basic medicine. Remember, a lot of medicine we have comes from overseas. They can't even buy fuel. Huge shortage of those kind of issues for them. And you can see the impact of it. A lot of people aren't able to have enough meals. But they also did some silly mistakes. The government there, the new government, decided to ban all fertilizer. So when they banned all fertilizer, the output of agricultural output halved by 50%. So what had happened was then they started importing a lot of their food from overseas. A country like Singapore, Singapore does not have farms. Singapore does not have farms like we have. They buy everything from Malaysia, Thailand, they get the chicken from Malaysia or Thailand. So obviously a huge impact. Singapore is obviously a richer country. But we have those certain advantages that some of the others don't have. But we have also certain disadvantages. Let's play the other one.
Helping put food on the table. Community kitchens like this are starting up around Sri Lanka as people struggle with its worst economic crisis in more than 70 years. Food inflation has hit nearly 60%, and many people are finding it difficult to cope.
Most of these community who are coming today or been coming are surviving with 2 meals. So we are giving them the responsibility of surviving for 1 meal, and we are saying, right, we will support you with 1 meal, but a good healthy meal.
Few now get to eat this well.
It's very difficult. We rarely get food like this. Only my husband is working, but what he earns for a day is not enough to feed the 3 of us now.
Tax cuts 3 years ago slashed government revenue by more than $2 billion. The tourism industry was then damaged by the Easter bombings and the pandemic. Now there is no money to import fuel, medicine, cooking gas or food.
Right now, actually, our main focuses are on food banks, on community kitchens, and again, long to medium-term community gardens and home gardens, because we can give rations, but it's very short-term.
The government is appealing for help.
We urgently require the assistance of our friends in the international community to ensure that our immediate needs in terms of the importation of essential medicine, food supply, and fuel army.
India and China have sent food and medicine in recent days. The opposition says the government has weakened the economy through populist policies and mismanagement. A nationwide campaign dubbed Gota Go Home has been running for 2 months, calling on the president to resign. The government is seeking a loan package from the International Monetary Fund or IMF. Critics say it'll take too long even if agreed, and people need action now.
Tens of thousands of Sri Lankans are going hungry amid the country's worst economic crisis in decades. Community kitchens like this can only feed a fraction of them. Mina Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
If you look at inflation, inflation is with how you measure when the price of things go up or down. Our inflation is about 5%. Inflation in USA is 8.5%. Japan is the lowest, 1.2%. Europe area is 7.4%. Australia is about 5.1%, similar to us. New Zealand is 6.9%. United Kingdom is about 9%. So everywhere in the world is inflation. This is the World Food Organization. They track the price of things. You can see the price of food going up, price of fuel, of oil going up, price of cereals, wheat, and all of that, meat. Sugar has been very constant. Of course, that's not very good news for us because we sell sugar. The price of sugar went really high, we'd get a lot more money for sugar, but it's remained constant. So, in the revised budget, we removed VAT on 21 items in Fiji, as you know, because we anticipated that this was already actually happening. If we did not remove VAT on these items, you would have been paying 9% more. But when we remove VAT on these items, government lost out $165 million. We no longer collected that money. But that's okay because you want people to have access to these basic things. Let me just take you through this. Sugar, of course, is grown in Fiji. Flour comes from overseas. Most of the rice you eat comes from overseas. A lot of the canned fish you eat comes from overseas. Cooking oil completely overseas. Potatoes not grown in Fiji. Onions, garlic, baby milk, powdered milk, all of this comes from overseas. Liquid milk, most of it comes from overseas, some Fijian milk you get. Dal, overseas. Tea, overseas. Salt, overseas. Soap, mainly overseas. Soap powder, overseas. Toilet paper, some made locally. Sanitary pads for women, overseas. Toothpaste, most of it overseas. Kerosene, overseas. Cooking gas, overseas. All of this comes from overseas. So you can now see the things that you consume on a daily basis or use, most of it comes from overseas. But of course, you no longer pay VAT on these items. So what have we done? We've actually made sure that our economy has remained stable, not like what's happening in Sri Lanka, of course. But it was stable not even before the pandemic. The exchange rate, we've got enough foreign reserves. The dollar has not been devalued. A lot of countries, the dollar value went down. Can you imagine if our dollar got devalued? If our dollar got devalued, that means anything you buy from overseas would cost you a lot more money. So that's remained stable. So even though our revenue went down by 50%, we still made sure that medical services remain free, the free education is there still for the children. If you have EFL electricity, we pay 50% of electricity cost if you earn less than $30,000 a year. Water is the same thing. And obviously a lot of the capital projects are still continuing. Some of the capital projects have slowed down a bit because you have to live within your means. We want to do lots of things in the past 2 years. Because government revenue went down by 50%, like some of the electrification projects, we slowed it down. Some road projects, we slowed it down. So as the economy picks up, then we can start redoing all of those things. We've given out $200 million for working capital support, in other words, soft loans, where you don't pay any interest rate, we pay the interest rate on your behalf. Those of you who sell in the Lambasa market, if you go to the market, you no longer pay any market fees, we pay for you on your behalf. All of those things we have done. We have reduced the duty, no more business licenses required. So the financial sector, of course, has remained solid. And we paid out $500 million in livelihood support. A lot of people nowadays talk about debt. You know, they say, well, Sullivan and General. They don't understand debt. There are two questions you have to ask. Is when you borrow money. What is the money being borrowed for? Number one. Are you borrowing money to connect people to electricity, to good roads, to water? If there's, like a pandemic, giving out unemployment benefit, that's good use of debt. That's good reason to borrow. If you're going to borrow and put one big convention center on top of that hill, so whenever some government minister comes and visit you, they can go and stay there, that's stupid use of money. You should not borrow money to do that. It's not productive. If tomorrow people get electricity over here, you can get your fridge, your cooler, you buy your fish, you can store your fish, you can get a high price for it. Right? That's what you call good productive use. So if you're borrowing money to connect people, that's a good thing. The second thing you have to look at is that what is the cost of the loan? What is the cost? So if he decides to borrow $100,000 to do some business, he goes to BSP, BSP says, no problem, I'll give you $100,000. 15% interest rate, you have to pay us back in 3 years' time. The gentleman here, he also wants to borrow $100,000. He goes to Home Finance, HFC. HFC says, no problem, $100,000. 30 years to pay, 1% interest rate. 3 years to pay, 15% interest rate. 30 years to pay, 1% interest rate. If I look at both of them, you say, oh, he's got $100,000 debt, he's got $100,000 debt. Both of them are in the same position. No, they're not. He knows he has to pay the loan off in 3 years. He's going to get high blood pressure. He has to make enough money every month to do the repayment. And anything that's left after that, that's what he lives on. And he knows he has to pay it off in 3 years' time. He's in relaxed mode. 1% interest rate, 30 years to pay. His cash flow doesn't have to be that high. He needs the debt. That's the second thing you have to ask. When people come and talk to you about Nina, you say, what is the cost of the debt? In the past 2 years, we borrowed from the Japanese at 0.01%. 40 years to pay, 10-year grace period. In other words, first 10 years we don't pay anything. By the time you end up paying that money, you only pay back 40% of what you borrowed. Because the interest rate is so low and you pay it over a long period of time. It's what you call a grant element. The World Bank is lending to us at 0%. Service fee is 0.75%. You pay back only 45% of what you borrowed. You know, those of you who are old enough to know, and I've used this example many times, my staff must be tired of listening to this example. When I was young boy, 5 cents you could get 10 Chinese lolly. Today, for 20 cents you can't even get one. Right? So as time goes by, the value of the dollar will go down. So if you have a long-term loan, if you borrow 40 million, by the time you pay back, you'll only pay about $16 million. That's how it works. So when you have a long-term loan with cheap interest rates, it's good for us. There's one way of measuring debt, One is you compare it to your GDP, what percentage? All countries in the world after pandemic, their debt levels have increased. Look at New Zealand. Traditionally, New Zealand is a low debt country. Debt to GDP ratio is 28%. After pandemic, 52%, almost double. Australia, 42 versus 62%. Was 42, now 62%. Fiji was 46, 48, now is about 79, 80. Of course, it's got almost double, but we had to do that. It's our revenue shot down. You see all these countries, look at them, they've all gone up. Even USA, Maldives, Japan, Suriname, St. Lucia, all these tourism-driven countries, UK. 86%, now 109%. However, unfortunately, some people will come and tell you, oh, Fiji is about to collapse. They don't talk about the other countries too. It's how you manage your debt is what is more important. You know how I talked to you before about your debt and how you grow your economy. You see, before the thinking used to be that if you have the pie is like what you have as a country. So if people over here in Tawake, they want some electricity, the thinking was we have to take it from somewhere else and then give it to these people. Take it from Mumbai and give it to these people. Thinking was not we have to grow the pie. If you grow the pie, everybody can get a bigger slice. That's what we've been doing. If you look at over here, even though our debt was increasing as a percentage of GDP, it was decreasing. Why? Because our economy is getting bigger. A lot of people forget Cyclone Winston came here, 2016. You know how much money we spent in rebuilding? $500 million. $500 million it cost us. All the schools in Fiji, very few, about 10, 12 schools in Fiji are government owned. All the other schools are run by Methodist Church, Catholic Church, Seventh Day, Muslim League, Sanatan Dharam, or some village community school. It's not owned by government. But when there's a cyclone, the school gets damaged, government has to fix it up. We spent over $200 million just fixing up schools. And of course the roads, the bridges, the jetties, that's the cost of Cyclone, Winston. That's why we don't like climate change. That's why our Prime Minister goes and talks about climate change. We're going to talk to the World Bank and ADB about climate change. We've had 14 cyclones since 2016. I'm old enough to know the last big cyclone we had in 1972 was the Cyclone BB. I don't know how many you remember that. Yeah. Cyclone BB. But after Cyclone BB, the next cyclone came 10 years later. The next big one, 10 years later. Now every year we get a cyclone. 3 cyclones, 4 cyclones. This year we had only 1 cyclone, but in Vitilevu, it rained so much that highways just got washed away between Singotoka and Nandi in a place called Kampisi. Semo, 1 lane went of the highway. Now why 1 lane went? In Ba and various other places. That's what you call unexpected expenses. We don't expect that. The other way, of course, you look at the dollar value of your debt. Tourism-dependent countries, nominal debt. In other words, what's the dollar value of the debt? These are all tourism-based countries. Some from the Caribbean, some from the Indian Ocean, and the other Pacific Island countries. Bahamas, which is a smaller country than ours, this is in US dollars. Is a debt of 11.4 billion US dollars, which is about 22, 23 billion Fijian dollars. Mauritius, 11.2 billion US dollars. Again, about 23 billion dollars Fijian. Barbados, 6.6 billion. Maldives, 6.3 billion. Fiji is 3.7 billion US dollars, which is about 8 billion dollars Fijian. You can see all the countries, the tourism base, their debt levels, some of them of course much higher than ours. That's the dollar value. What you have to ask is, are we doing the repayments? And of course we are doing the repayments. We've never defaulted on any of our loans. Let's look at other countries, the big ones. This is not in billion dollars, this is in trillion dollars. Not billion, trillion, the next one up. US's debt is $30.5 trillion. That's about 60 trillion Fijian dollars. Japan's $13 trillion. US is the most debt-ridden country in the world. Japan 13 trillion. China 12.8 trillion. These are all in US dollars. India 2.8 trillion. Australia is $1 trillion. All of these countries, you can see them. Fiji is above 0 trillion, he's not even in the trillion league. So, my point is that people who talk about debt in Fiji, they don't say, oh, USA is in trouble. They don't say Australia is in trouble, even though their debt is $1 trillion. They only talk about the Fijian debt out of context. Now, I've talked to you about foreign reserves. The International Monetary Fund says that you should have at least enough foreign reserves to trade for 3 to 4 months. That's a good, healthy sign. Because the other way that we get foreign reserves is when we export things. We export yangona, we sell, bhaji, bindi, bora overseas, we sell fish overseas, Fiji water goes overseas, we get foreign reserves coming in. The other main foreign reserve earner for us, or currency for us, of course, is tourism. If you see over here, in 2010, we had 1.3 billion worth of foreign reserves. These are the months of imports. We could import about 4 months worth. Today, we have $3 billion worth of foreign currency with us. You can trade for about 8.4 months. So in a good place, very comfortable position. Sometimes when you have lots of foreign reserves, the months you can trade is shorter. Why? Because when the economy is moving a lot of construction going on, we are buying lots of things from overseas. Today in Fiji, because the economy is growing, you see a lot more cars on the roads. You go to Suva, you go to places like 9 miles, it takes you sometimes over 1.5 hours to get to Suva. Nearly everybody has a car now. People buy things, they buy more phones. So the economy is doing well, there's a lot more jobs around, you'll find that a lot more things are being bought from overseas. The other thing is very quickly is what you call liquidity. Liquidity means how much money there is in the banks. When we had the COVID, we knew that because our tourism dollars will come down, when we borrowed money, we borrowed more money from overseas. Normally we borrow money from Fiji. 70% of our borrowings we have from Fiji. Every government in the world borrows. How much you borrow depends on the different country. But we borrowed more from overseas because we wanted more foreign reserves to come in, just to keep that buffer. And also we wanted more cash in the system. Because we know when the economy shuts down, when it's going to open up again, people will want access to money. People start building their homes, they start doing other things. So the cost of the money needs to come down. So we got about $2.1 billion. I'll put it in simple terms. The banks are not happy when they have lots of money with them. Banks are happy when they lend a lot of money. Because their business is making money from money. Right? Just because the bank has $4 billion in their account, they're not happy. They want to, because it's not making any money for them. They make money through interest. They lend you money, you pay them the repayment, they increase the amount of money they have. That's how banking system works. So, tourism is coming back. The downside, the two risks that we have. When we do the budget, there's two things that we don't have any control over. We don't know what's going to happen in Russia and Ukraine. God forbid the war spreads. The other day they were talking about invading some other country in Europe. If that happens, it can become even a bigger problem. We can't control that. We don't know what's going to happen. God willing, the war stops. If the war stops, you'll see the price of wheat will come down. The price of oil will come down. Russia is the third largest producer of oil, fuel. There is a direct gas pipeline on land from Russia to Germany. The cooking gas. Now that's stopped. Because America says we have to do a trade ban on Russia because they have to punish them for invading Ukraine. Europeans say you have to punish them, no more trading from Russia. So that means there's still high demand for gas, but low supply. So that's one thing. The other thing that's a risk factor for us is climate change. We don't know what the next cyclone is going to present to us. So sometimes when there's a cyclone, it's unexpected. So we have to, if this road of yours has a huge landslide, gets washed away because of cyclone. For us, we have to say, hey, we have to get these people access to the road. What are we going to do? We have to take money from somewhere else. We were supposed to do a project to maybe tahsil some road in Vitilevu, we stop that. We bring that money, use it here to give you connectivity. That's what happens because of cyclone. Somebody's, some village or some area, the bridge gets washed away. You have to take money from somewhere else. Say, sorry, you're not going to do your project this year. These people need access to the market, they need access to the schools, you have to build that bridge now. That's what happens with climate change. So, we are carrying out a lot of changes, and we're saying over here, it is in everyone's interest to protect the fragile recovery. We need to have a collaborative approach. We need to work together to be able to ensure that we get out of this economic situation that has been propelled by the Russia-Ukraine war and the pandemic. There's some new challenges we've got also now. In Australia last week in Melbourne, the waiting time at the public hospital was 24 hours. You can Google it, you can go to ABC News. 24 hours. Why? There's a shortage of nurses. A lot of the people in these countries don't want to work as nurses. So what are they going to do? They'll probably try and steal some of our nurses. There's a shortage of fruit pickers. The shortage in New Zealand, they've got there's shortage of about 60,000 people to work in the hotels and the restaurants. So they might come and take our people. They might be happy or great, I'm going to go and work in New Zealand, I'm going to work in Australia, but then what's going to happen to us? Right? If they take all our nurses, who's going to look after you when you go to the health center? The other day it was advertised in the newspaper that Australians are looking for chefs to the cooking. Any chef with more than 3 years experience, they're offering $80,000 to $120,000 Australian. A lot of Australians don't want to do chef work. So if they take our chefs, who's going to run our cooking in our kitchen? So what we're doing now is we're talking to Fijian National University and saying to them, look, we have to do more courses so our people can continuously get trained. When there was the Christchurch earthquake, they had to rebuild the city. They gave a lot of short-term permits, work permits to our carpenters, joiners, bricklayers. Now they've been given permanent residency. So at one stage in Suva, when all the construction is going on, there's a shortage of bricklayers. So we have to be also mindful of that. So when we do the budget, we have to think about these things. Today in Fiji, most of you over here are the age of 40, right? Most of you in this room. The young people outside. Today in Fiji, 70% of the population is below the age of 40. 70%. 65% of the population is below the age of 35. What happens? What does it mean? It means when you have a younger population, we'll get more babies. Right? Young people make babies, not old people like us. Right? So when we do the budget, we have to think. You don't just plan for now, we have to think what's going to happen in 10 years' time. So we have to make sure that our schooling system, our TELs, our toppers, education system is in place for these people, a young child sitting there on the left, that they have the same opportunity that we currently giving the people now. So we can't think up till here, we have to think beyond that. And for a budget, there are two things in a budget. In a budget, we have to address what's for next year, but we also have to have certain parts of the budget that's going to be for the future also. It's a combination of long-term, short-term issues. So, again, we have to make sure that we put in place the right tax reforms, etc. We are at the moment, last year we had the highest amount of agriculture produce that was exported. Big thing in USA is ginger. Ginger, turmeric, turmeric, the haldi, put in the curry, that's supposed to be a superfood. They get the powdered ginger, powdered haldi, put it in milk, drink it. They say it's good for your joints and clears it up, all of that. People in Ranawanagosa, in the hills, we got wild ginger, they're digging it up and they're selling it. Huge demand for that. So if you see the three large exports last year was kava, ginger and turmeric. Of course, we're focusing on things like BPO. Many people don't know about BPO. BPO means Business Processing Outsourcing. That's the only sector during COVID that grew jobs, 3,000 new jobs. What is BPO? BPO is, just put simply, if I'm living in Australia and I want to ring up my local branch, the bank, on the phone to ask something about my bank account, when I dial that number, the phone call will come to some lady in Suva sitting there and answering the phone. Say, good morning, sir. How can I help you? Because for them, it's cheaper to do it in Fiji than to do it in Australia. There are now companies based in Suva and the West that are doing bookkeeping services. Insurance claim forms are being processed in Fiji for those people in Australia. Last year we had a meeting with a lot of businesses through Zoom, the Zoom meeting, and said, trying to entice them to come to Fiji. If anybody sets up a BPO company in Fiji, we say don't pay tax for 20 years. That's fine, because we want to create jobs. We want more BPOs actually to come to Vanuatu. I don't know how many of you know, but we've landed a submarine cable in Sabu. And then TFL is going to build a fiber optic cable from Sabu all the way to Lambasa. So essentially that means we can get BPO companies to come to Vanuatu. A lot of your land is underutilized. The real estate is a lot cheaper. We want the Vanuatu people to stay in Vanuatu, we want to send BPO people to Vanuatu too. And that's how you spread the risk. As you know that in the 1990s and in the 2000s also, a lot of the cane farmers, their leases weren't renewed. They had nowhere to go. The sugarcane production in Vanuatu went down by 50%. Where are those guys? They're living as squatters between Suva and Nassori. Out in some squatter area, in the mangrove, on the sewage pipe and all those places they're living. So we want better utilization of land, getting more businesses to Vanuatu too. So those are some of the things that we focus on. Also health tourism. We've got a public-private partnership now. God willing, by next month, we'll have open heart surgeries done in Lautoka Hospital. At the moment, if you ever want to have an open heart surgery, you have to go overseas. You'll soon be having that in Fiji too. At the moment, if anyone has a heart attack, there's not a single Fijian doctor that can do open heart surgery. Not one Fijian doctor that can do it. So as part of this deal that we've got, they'll build a new wing at Lautoka Hospital, and in that new hospital they'll have what we call a learning operating theatre. So our doctors can learn and watch. When these people come from overseas, then God willing in a few years' time, they can do the open heart surgery themselves. That's part of the plan. There's other things that's attached to it too. So as part of the budget, we obviously want to continue our investment in education, health services, infrastructure development, connectivity. As you know that we were here some months back, there's a health center down there, I forget the name of the village. Langi, we were there. We connected them with the internet and Walesi. So in fact, mainly we've connected all the schools with Walesi. There's still more schools to do. So if there's a school, we give them internet, we give the teachers webcam, computers, because we don't want the children in a remote area not to have internet, because all the people in Lambasa and Suva and Nandi are having it. You have to create equality. That's what we call inclusive development. So wherever there's been a village and there's a school, we Wi-Fi the school compound. So the villagers can come there and use their phone there too. To the Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi. Minimum wage, as you know, has gone up to $4. In the full $4 we'll realize in January. When we increase minimum wage, we just don't pull a figure out of the air. Bring an expert from Australia, he looks at everything, see what the country can afford, what employers can afford, and then we put in place the minimum wage. So ladies and gentlemen, you can make budget submissions later on to the email address that we have over here. I also just want to very quickly, if you go to the web page, you can get all the information, a lot more information than what I've told you on the web page. A lot of information there, you can read it yourself. I want to very quickly highlight to you about education. Every year in the budget we spend now, through this government, we spend about $700 million a year in education. Altogether. We give grants to universities. All the teachers in Fiji, their salaries is paid by us. There's about 12,000 teachers in Fiji. All the salaries we pay. Of course, then we have the grants to the schools. But we have also the toppers and the tails. See, in Fiji we lack a lot of marine scientists, foresters, the nurses, at one point not enough doctors, so we give toppers for that. Land surveyors, not enough land surveyors. A lot of children don't want to do land surveying. We're trying to encourage them. We give you a topper scholarship. I don't know how many parents over here have said to their children or their daughter or their son, I want you to be a land surveyor. A lot of people say, I want you to be a lawyer. But there's too many lawyers. We don't give any toppers for lawyers. So that's how the scholarship system is set up. We address areas where there's shortage of people. Australia has just taken a lot of our teachers in the maths who teach math, science and physics because they have a shortage of math, science, physics teachers there. My brother-in-law teaches in a remote Australian town. Get paid lots of allowances. Because they're trying to entice them. We can't match that. There'll be that, there'll be attrition. People will go. But we have to train our people too. So we have, like this year's budget, the one just currently is going, which will finish in 2 weeks' time, $156.5 million just for toppers and tails. Some people say they'll make university completely free. It's pie in the sky stuff. You can't do that. The child over there, you won't be able to fund them in a few years' time. It's not sustainable. But if your child, for example, got TELS loan and they finish university, they don't have to start paying back the loan unless they start working. And only small percentage is taken out. If they pay the loan within 3 years, we forgive the other, if they pay 50% of the loan in 3 years, we forgive the other 50%. Don't have to do that. It was announced last year. Unemployment assistance, we paid $205 million from March 2020 to June 2021. This is for those people who were formally, engaged. In other words, they worked somewhere where they paid tax or at least had FNPF. So if somebody worked at Cousteau's in South Southern and they lost their job because the hotel was shut down, we said you can access your FNPF general account. If there's no money there, it finishes, we give you $225 a fortnight. Those people got that much money. People working in Lambasa, various other places, they got $225 a fortnight. That came up to $205 million. That's how much we paid out. Then in Viti Levu, we paid out the $90, the 2 rounds of 50, and 2 rounds of 360. This came to 10.6, 11.2, 10.2, 106, $87 million. We also paid out $100 in Vanuatu, as you know, recently. We've already paid out about $2 million for that. So all up, we paid $432 million in what we call unemployment assistance or livelihood assistance. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll stop there now. And let's open up the floor for any questions you may have, any suggestions you'd like to make. I'd like to thank you very much for hosting us. It's the first time we've come to this part of Vanuatu. It's quite nice to be here. And thank you very much. I must say you've got a great place over here. When I saw your village, I also thought about the risks over here. Of course, you've got a sea level rise. What can we do? I mean, a few weeks ago in Namatakula, in Novosa, right next to the sea, and we're building, they've got huge erosion problems, we're building a seawall for them. Nowadays, when we build seawalls, we have 2 types of seawall. One is what you call the conventional seawall, which is just a concrete wall. The other one is what you call nature-based solutions. In other words, we put big boulders in front of them, we plant mangroves, we put vetiver grass. That is a much better way if you can do it, because when you put mangroves and all that, you get crabs, you get a lot of sea life. So that also helps the environment around the village itself. Raga, let's open the floor. Thank you. And please don't hesitate. You can ask a question in the Ethiopian language or any other language people will translate. Feel comfortable. Raga.
As you see in the board, there are detailed sketch of Tawake district. The reason I want to make it clear to you, sir, because this is the first time you arrive in our district. Our district consists of 6 villages and 15 settlements. Populations of less than 2,000 adults and children. which are in the village. We want to read out our request in regarding to our remote areas in Tawake. Tawake district, the main request is the road. The reasons we want to move the road right to Tawake at the moment is the increasing of the fuel price. To tell you, to be frank, all the people from Tawake district, those people from Wainika, Tawake, right up to the coast, they arrive from Mombasa every week. If they are here in Wangandu and they had their fiber, the price of the fiber right at the moment, you have the fiber from Wangandu to Tawake, it's costing $60. You hire the fiber from Wangandu to Wainika, it costs $180. Wangandu to Batu, $150. Wangandu to Nangasawa, it costs you $200. Wangandu to Asawa, it costs you right at the moment almost $300. So this is the struggle they are facing at the moment. So our request to put the road just in Tawake for the first one, phase one, that is, if you can improve the road and let the bus come in before Christmas, or that will be much better. And after that, for the phase two, from Tawake Village, we move on to Batu. Because all these are already surveyed. The reason is, we want to take the road quickly as soon as possible from Tawake to Batu, just because there is a sensitive area in our district, is here, Mboi. This area got the good water source. This area can provide hydro, and that water source can provide hydro. And also, this place will be the ideal place for ice plant for our Wundu area and those islands, Rambi and those islands on the west. These are some of the reasons we want to move the road quickly across Mboi, which is known as this location, to reach Batu, because right at the moment, there is a big problem from those 4 villages, the water problem. They are facing big problems. And they got boreholes in Nasawa, borehole in Nasawa. They got the same problem in Batu and Wainika. So if we make the road past Mboi and to Batu, the Mboi water source can supply the water right up to Ndu with no problem. These are some of the reasons we want the road to be there. And it is an ideal place for hydro, to be a source of energy. We make the hydro in here, it can cover the whole Wundu Point, the whole area for the hydro process.
Why is it good hydro? Is it in a waterfall or what is it?
It got a higher level water source right from the mountains. And some place waterfall. And that's why the chief allowed me to ask because those are the reasons they can form the hydro.
Yeah, normally for hydro, somebody will have to come and measure. If you have a natural fall, as you know, hydro works because it turns the turbine. Essentially, you get water, you turn the turbine. And when the turbine turns, then the engine moves. And that's how you get hydro energy.
Sure.
So, as you know, a lot of places when they build a dam, then they channel the water from the dam into a narrow gauge, so that with a lot of force, it turns the turbine, and the generator moves. So somebody will have to be able to come and study that.
Sure.
And there's not a problem in getting a study done. We can get people to come to the study. You have to give them access to that. And so we can talk to EFL and our Department of Energy people, but we need to look at that.
Thank you, sir.
But I assume that it can also be used for drinking.
Sir. Pure water. Sir.
So, you know, yeah, we'll then need to look at whether it needs to be treated or not. Sometimes water may look pure, but it may not be exactly pure. So they need to treat that whether it's drinkable water or not. Okay. For that, I mean, we've obviously made notes of all of these things, right? If you got written up, too? Okay. If you can hand that to us too.
I got the letter written about the road. He received it in the boat, but few requests been done. The new ones, I'll contact you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, or you can give it to us directly. You can take it with us. We can take it with Ministry of Economy. Can take it too.
Thank you.
You know, we started a program last year called the Seafarers Program. Essentially, what we said that in the maritime areas, in the outer islands, that government will contribute $10,000 towards the purchase of boats with the engine. So that was not applicable to Vitilevu and Vanuatu. It is only for outer islands like Yasawa, Lau, Kandavu, Nolomai Viti, etc. So you have to bring your $10,000 because with the normal size boat, the punt, with the engine, we did the costing that time is about $21,000. Right? And we give, together with that, we give the life jackets, everything is combined in that. So we are thinking at the moment, in the past couple of weeks, we've been deciding to expand that to remote villages on Vitilevu and Vanuatu. So you obviously can qualify for that. So that, the reason why we didn't do that is because a lot of people, some individuals, somebody was saying earlier on that they have, say, relatives overseas. So you may have a couple of cousins who may say to you, look, I can give you $10,000. And when government gives the $10,000, that boat becomes yours. So you can not only transport people, you can start charging people money. So we want people to get also into business. And that's how we assist people. And once we open that up, you can apply for that. Or as a community, if you want to get together, you may collect $10,000, $11,000 and government will contribute $10,000. The boat is built at a government-approved manufacturer, and then we also, on top of that, provide all the equipment, the engines, etc. So we'll be extending that. So it's up to you whether you want to apply for that or not, and you can do that. And of course, you can charge people money for that too. And we can give that information to you through your Rawani Koro, through you, etc.
From Kambukenela Infant School. This is the interior of Sangani. So I leave the school this morning about 2 o'clock. So I reach here about 5 o'clock this afternoon to requesting our school for the approval of year 5 and 6. Volboni is located in the interior of Sangani, and the school is for Nandomo, Nadula, and Volboni. From the beginning, sir, we are already built the 1 ECE classroom, and in 2019 we built 2x1 classrooms for Keita year 3 and 4. In 2020, we are requesting the AMU for 29,000 to build 1x2 classrooms for the completion of year 5 to year 8. From that time, sir, till now, we are still requesting, but we are not yet receiving any information that we get an approval for our students. The students for year 5 and 6, sir, as I can informing right now, it's like a butterfly in the village. So they can go into other schools because it's too far away from their parents. And second barriers that are facing from the schools is the road conditions. As I already been mentioned on the FBC news on about last 3 months or 4 months ago, the students they are traveling by back horses in the morning and they go again in the afternoon. So we are requesting, sir, for the approval of year 5 to 8, sir. Thank you.
Please over details with our staff so we can have a look at that. Okay? And the contact details. Thank you. Sure. Okay, please go ahead.
This is about concerning about the $100 cash assistance. We have been trying our very best for the last 2 weeks. And first of all, we can't even fill the form sent by the Vodafone to our phone. I'm right from one of the second last village from Undu Point in Ngasawa. And it's very, very hard for us. The network is very low. That is the reason why, sir, I'm requesting if you could kindly please extend that $100 so that we can go and try again for another 2 weeks, or at least just timeline at the end of this month, please. I'll try tomorrow here.
But do you get connection here?
A connection here.
So why didn't you do it 2 weeks ago?
No, sir, because I'm right from there and it's very hard for us to come down. Even if I want to travel from the village where I'm staying here, it will cost money too, $17 per head. So our only chance is you're coming, sir. You brought light to us. Thank you.
Do people here grow marijuana? No. It's a serious question. Because we down lower area, they said that they do grow. The reason I'm asking is this, is because as we announced in the budget, we want to introduce what we call industrial hemp. You know, there are different kinds of marijuana. What we call marijuana in Fiji is hemp. The old word was Indian hemp. Now, industrial hemp, you can't get high from it. There's, you know, like in alcohol, they say 4% alcohol, 10% alcohol. Same thing with marijuana, it's a thing called THC. So industrial hemp has the THC level of 1% or less. If it's high, then you get high from it. But THC, if it's 1% or less, even if you're going to smoke an entire field, you won't get high. But it's used for making clothes, making rope. It's very fibrous. They even make bricks from it. So we want to introduce industrial hemp in Fiji. All of the land is available for that. We are currently, I had a meeting 2 weeks ago with the UN, because you have to make sure that, you know, internationally we are compliant with everything. We talked about where we can get the seeds from industrial hemp. There's no industrial hemp in Fiji. So the soil is good for growing it. So we're looking at all of those things. We have to work with the Fijian National University, the agriculture school. We'll have to bring the plants from Canada, what they call the mother seeds, or the mother plants. We have more seedlings through the FNU. Then we can give out the seedlings for people to grow industrial hemp. But before we do that, we have to make sure that somebody's going to buy it. And at what price will they pay? So we're going to work all of those things out. You know, God willing, in about 6 to 9 months' time, that's another opportunity. Because we know where we went earlier on, they said a lot of people grow in, you know, the Golden Triangle. They grow it over there. So this is a good substitute for that also. A lot of places in the hillsides you can grow there. Just to flag that with you.
Okay. Change my birth certificate into my married name. I mean, when the law was passed, it didn't really matter until, you know, we actually, as grassroots levels, when we had to go and change our names, it's kind of a bit costly to us women, especially women, because we had to change our names to maiden names or change even the birth certificate to our marriage name, which it doesn't make sense. But there might be a good excuse, a good reason why the law was changed, to change our voter names detail as on our birth certificate. But I mean, personally, I would think to show our marriage certificate, that would be sufficient enough, because it's a legal document. Sufficient enough to actually change to our marriage name in in any documents, legal documents, for example, bank or titles. Otherwise, to change all of that again into a maiden name, it'll be very costly for us women at the grassroots level. So maybe the government could at least explain the reason, or maybe change the law back to where we can use our married name without having to change our birth certificate. Thank you.
In some countries, what we call birth certificate in Fiji is called a name registration certificate. In Fiji, because the British, they called it birth certificate. In some countries, it's called a name registration. So what name will you be registered by? Your official, what's your name? So in Fiji's case, of course, when you are born, your parents go and register you. Or your grandparents, if your parents are not around, and that becomes your registered name, official document, which is your name. Over the years, what's happened is that when people then, females obviously, get married, the passport office, and generally, they allowed women to take the surname of their husband, and they've developed the passports under the married name. There is a lot of confusion now, because those of you who have been vaccinated, we had a lot of situations where when you went to get vaccinated, they asked you for your birth certificate, right? So your birth certificate name is there. You write down your name, birth certificate name, vaccine, dose 1, dose 2. Some people who are Fijians who had their passport under their married name, but the vaccine card is under their birth certificate name. When they want to travel overseas, like in America, they did not accept the vaccine card, or they did not accept their passport. You're supposed to be the same person. How come your name is different? So this is what you call identification issues. Because for Ministry of Health, the only document they can rely on is your birth certificate. That's why they chose the birth certificate name to be on the vaccine card. We've highlighted this on a number of occasions. So we had people, for example, who have registered under different name in their voter registration. The name they go by is different. Some people have two names. They pick and choose which name to use. This happens. Some people have three names. So what we have done, we have said, there are males also. Some males have had passports name, like some people have 3, 4 names. So they have only 2 names they use for the passport. And the birth certificate has got all the 4 names. So we want to have what we call single source of identification. So for the females, it's your choice. If you decide to take your husband's name, then you change your name registration form, which is your birth certificate, to that name. It does not cost you a single cent. There's no cost. It's free. You go to the BDM office, there's a name registration form, you can change it, it does not cost you 1 cent even. It's free. If you already have your, for example, driving license, it's in the law. It says that that name can be used until your driving license expires. It's there. So it's very easy. It does not cost you a cent to change your name. Before, you had to pay a deed of poll. A lot of people change their names, You have to go to a lawyer, pay $500, $600, some lawyers charge $1,000. Now it does not cost a single cent. Even birth certificates now is free. This year we said anybody gets a birth certificate is free. But you need a single source of identification. There are a lot of problems, for example, travel overseas. Passport is a different name. The vaccine card is in a different name. So those countries did not recognize the vaccine card. They said, hey, your passport is this name. You get your vaccine card in this name. They know they can't get it. So they've changed their passport. That's why it's been done.
It is an honor for me to say a few words of thanks. Sir, Thank you so much for giving your time to visit us in this very, very remote place of Tawake. Say your deliberation and a consultation on the budget enlighten us. It will help us to make our life much easier and enjoyable in this difficult and challenging environment as you have witnessed so far. Sir, I assure you that the people of Tawake will go back more satisfied than this morning. Thank you for remember Tawake. Sir, with these regards, thank you once again. I salute you for your time and deliberation for the people of Tawake. Vinakasaga.
And the man who was doing the thank you, he kept on saying, you wanted to say Honorable Attorney General, kept on saying the horrible Attorney General. The horrible Attorney General, thank you. You're such a horrible man. So I'm glad you didn't say that in Tawake. Thank you very much. Look, it's been a great pleasure being here. It's my first time here too, but I thank you for your warmth and your hospitality and of course your friendliness. God willing, we can do a lot more now with the economy opening up. It gives us more ability, a lot more space to do a lot more infrastructure works. I would be lying to you if I say to you, don't worry, all of this will get done next year. It can't get all done next year, but there's certain things that we can do. We've already been talking about it, each step at a time. But as I said, that the world is going through a very unstable period. We don't know what's going to happen in Europe, whether the war will extend to other countries or not. We, as together as Fijians, we need to ensure that we do a lot of things in collaboration. As I mentioned to you about things like food, you know, we need to rely more upon our sort of indigenous foods and fruits that will help us defray some of the costs. And as a government, our job is also to try and help people who may be in the margins of society, to help them ensure that they're able to have sustainable livelihoods. That's our job. We don't only look till next year, we need to look beyond and do some forward planning too. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I wish you all a very good evening.